history, apologetics, and more. We're making education, families, and America great again. Here's Ray.
Well, welcome to Ray Moore Live. Glad to be with you again. And this sunny day on the 19th of March. I guess I've been off for the last 2 weeks, out of town, and we had reran some old programs that were favorites of mine, and I hope they were acceptable. Some of them were so far back that perhaps you hadn't seen them before, so it was new to you. We've got a body of work now after 9 months. We've got a lot of programs, and so I guess I can duck out every now and then and run an old program and know that the program is carrying on. And so thanks to Jared Heath as our producer for being able to do that and for keeping archives back for 9 months. Today, however, we're going to introduce a new thing that we've done. And it's called, this program, I guess, is entitled Introducing the New Christian Education Initiative. And we're going to be talking about that. We actually publicly launched that on the 13th of March. And it's brand spanking new, but we've been actually working on it for months. And we have one guest this morning, Dr. Max Lyons, with the Foundation for American Christian Education. And he's on, and we're going to be talking to him about his program and also the Alliance. So that's what we're about this morning. Let me say a little bit about the Alliance. For decades, some of us have been laboring in the vineyard of Christian education, trying to grow Christian schools and homeschooling, trying to get churches, families, and pastors to withdraw their children from the state-sponsored public education system and go exclusively into Christ-centered, Bible-based Christian education. That's been the mission of the Exodus Mandate really since 1997. I've been operating for 22 years. Foundation for American Christian Education has been operating even longer than that. But we came together in August in Appomattox, Virginia at one of our conferences. And this had been building for a long time. It had been discussed for several years to form some kind of a coalition or alliance. We struggled for months to come up with a name for it, where we could band together and collaborate because we had so many shared agenda items and concerns. And so we voted, I think it was August 19th. There were about a dozen people in the room. Max and his wife, Marjorie, were two of them. My wife, Gail, and I were there. And we had decided to go ahead and form an alliance. And now we named it a few months ago called the Christian Education Initiative. It's strictly about Christian education. Most of our groups have worked in K-12 Christian education, but we decided, since we think all education should be Christ-centered and Bible-based, that we were going to leave open higher education, even though most of us at this time don't address that. We address K-12. And so we met and voted to go forward, and yours truly was, I guess, chosen as the chairman. I sort of volunteered for it, but everybody seemed to think it was a good idea. And I'm the chairman of this effort, and we've got some substantial groups that are working with us. Just so happy that this has happened. So let's go ahead and put the news release up first, Jared. I think you have that there. All right. So, okay, here we go. Put the news release up. And you can see it's dated March 13th, so we released it publicly on March 13th. So really only about a week old publicly. And we had 12 at the initial meeting in August, but now we have 18 members. And here you can see some of them. And some were known in the Christian education arena. And particularly Foundation for American Christian Education. That's Dr. Carol Adams and Dr. Max Lyons. and Carol is a member, but Max sort of represents the foundation in most of our meetings and in our collaborations together. Okay, let's see. We have Jay Jacino. We've had him on the program. He's written a book called Truth is Fallen in the Street. And his argument is that the teachers in public school, that is Christian teachers, can't really use a strictly Christian methodology of pedagogy. And maybe they should consider leaving, since they're so restricted and harassed and coerced by the state model, and come over into the Christian education arena and help in that area. We have the Providence Foundation, which is a wonderful group. They've worked in dozens of foreign countries teaching America's Christian heritage and the Christian foundation principles of our nation. Stephen McDowell has written some wonderful books. I think one is I've used in our homeschool experience called America's Providential History. If you haven't read that or seen that, you've missed out. Kevin Novak, our resident attorney, has written a book called Deconstructing the Coliseum. I'm sorry, the book is called Abolition, but his organization is Deconstructing the Coliseum. I'm probably not going to be able to mention everybody because we've got 18 members and we really want to spend a lot of time talking to Max about his program. Paul and Gina Schwartz, the Old Schoolhouse magazine, which is the largest explicit Christian homeschool magazine in the nation. Okay, let's go down to the mission statement. All right, here we go. And any way to highlight that, Jared, on the internet? It's right, the one under that, next one down, right there. Christian Education Initiative. There we go. We labored and struggled and debated and prayed over this mission statement. We wanted to get that right. If you have the wrong mission statement, then you never get a good start. So we are a Bible-based evangelical alliance of member organizations whose purpose is to advance the kingdom of God by growing Christian education, thus fulfilling the Great Commission and the cultural mandate. Very broad, but this is what we're trying to do, and we believe we can do it. All right, let's go to the back page and look at some of our broad objectives. Go scroll. There we go. All right, right there. The Christian Education Initiative has 6 broad objectives. First is to facilitate a dramatic increase in the number of children exiting government schools and entering into Christian education for Christian schooling and homeschool co-ops and other Christian education models. So we're strictly about Christian education. We're not attempting, point 2, to reform the unbiblical, unconstitutional government school model. Many people are laboring, conservatives and Christians, trying to reform public education. We don't think it can be done. It's a socialistic model, and it shouldn't really exist in its current form. So we're not trying to fix it. We're not trying to reform it. We're trying to basically repeal it or privatize it and move strictly into biblical Christian education for all churches and children. Okay, there we go. That already goes to point 3. I won't mention that again. We're going to be, in number 4, about a strict biblical philosophy, curriculum, and methodology. And this is very important because a lot of Christian schools use often secular or non-Christian methodology. And we think that not only do we have a content that must be Christ-centered and Bible-based, but how we teach is also has a biblical model as well. 5, to encourage, promote, to train parents, pastors, teachers, and board members in biblical philosophy, curriculum, and methodology of education. So we're going to be really looking a lot at the church and how to buck up pastors and churches to get behind this effort. There's such a lag in our churches. They just don't see it in many cases. And then finally, to promote, help parents with limited financial means to be able to afford biblical Christian education without government entanglement, and primarily looking at private scholarship programs and things that would help financially without entangling us. And we're not going to be a voucher group, but there are some programs out there that would not entangle Christian schools and be a danger to them. So we're going to be looking at these are the 6 general objectives. All right, so let's talk a little bit then now about Foundation for American Christian Education. Dr. Max Lyons is on, and Max, tell us who you are and a little bit of the history of FACE, and I'm going to put some kudos in when I get a chance. All right, we're welcome to Dr. Max Lyons, and he's here representing Foundation for American Christian Education. He's one of our founding members, and frankly, FACE is one of the, we have 18 members, but they're one of the larger, more substantial groups that have been around a long time and have a good history. Max?
Well, thank you, Ray. Max Lyons here. As Ray said, I'm the Director of Teaching Services for the Foundation for American Christian Education. Our president is Dr. Carol Adams, and she and I, all of us are very excited to be part of this new Christian education initiative. FACE has been working in the area of Christian education now for 55 years. We just not too long ago had our 50th anniversary, and we actually go back to our founders started working in the 1940s, Verna Hall and Rosalie Slater. So this work has been going on a long time. I've been involved in it with it myself for 40 years now. So we are, again, we're very excited to be part of a united effort. We see FACE's involvement in this alliance, or this initiative, is critical to our mission, because we believe that, as the mission statement says, all 18 of our organizations, and there's probably more that could be added. I know there are more that could be added. We all have this goal of seeing more children out of the government system into Christian education. We all believe in that, and we all, each one of our organizations have a different aspect as far as supporting Christian education or supporting homeschoolers, or being involved in some way in Christian education. And FACE certainly has a unique contribution, which we can talk about more. But we're just happy to be a part of an effort that, Ray, I think that working together, one of the principles of, the 7 principles of the principle approach is the principle of unity and union. And, the Bible talks about how two or three can do more than, one working by themselves. And there's power in unity. And Carol and I and us at FACE, I can assure you, we're very excited about the unity that we have as an organization and how we can each contribute to this important mission.
Okay, Max, we're going to come back to you, so don't go away. We're going to spend a good bit of time discussing FACE this morning, but let me put a commercial in here. My wife and I were in Indiana in the 70s, and I was finishing up my seminary training at Grace Seminary in Winona Lake, and we actually started in that period of the mid-70s, started our homeschooling experience. And in those days, there was hardly any curriculum. I mean, Abeka, Bob Jones, Alpha, Omega, all these groups didn't exist as far as curriculum for homeschoolers. And we had to kind of patch a plan together. My wife is actually an educator and taught for years in a Christian school, so she had background. And So we came across the FACE, Foundation for American Christian Education books, and we just call them the Big Red Books. And they were actually tools in our homeschool experience. And we got to know Ruth Smith, who works is a extension, a part of your national apparatus, and had her for a conference in Indiana in the mid '70s. And we were kind of introduced to your program, Max, way back, and we used the books in our homeschool experience. And I've always described FACE as the gold standard for Christian education. There are a lot of really good groups out there that do a good job, and we may at some point feature some of the others, but this is really one of the stronger, more substantive and content-centered programs. And I like it because it looks at some of the unique Christian heritage experiences in the American model. In other words, we had a Christian heritage in our founding era, and FACE looks at that and incorporates that into their program. Let's put up their webpage, Jared, and we're going to get Max to comment on it. Okay, this is a webpage for Foundation for American Christian Education, and I urge you to go there and study it. They have so much to offer for homeschool families and for Christian day schools. Talk a little bit about some of the programs, Max, and we're going to ask you some questions.
Well, as you can, you've already touched on something that is very near and dear to our heart, and that is teaching what is some refer to as Christian history. We often refer to it as providential history. The foundation actually started with a study or a rediscovery of providential history by our founder, Verna Hall, who started researching in the 1940s. Believe it or not, back then her motivation was understanding why we're moving away from capitalism and liberty and free enterprise into socialism. So that problem is not a new problem. Verna actually started her study of history and government and law and economics with that in mind, trying to figure out why we were moving away from the principles of liberty from our founding period to principles of bondage and collectivism and the welfare state. So she was very perceptive, Verna Hall, seeing this back in the 1940s. She was actually working with FDR, if you can believe that, in the implementation of the New Deal. And her own personal experience was she started seeing that the thinking of the American people change into this entitlement mentality. So Verna rediscovered, if you will, the Christian history of our nation. It had been there all along, but it had been lost. It was no longer taught in the schools, no longer believed by a number of Americans because they were not taught it anymore. So that is a big part of our program. If you are interested in that, want to learn more about, feel like you've learned history the wrong way or don't understand a providential view of history or a Christian view of history, we have all kinds of resources in terms of print material, videos, free material. There's all kinds of things. You can explore that on our website. If you see the button up there on the top right that says shop, that will take you into our bookstore. And we have currently have about 200 products that not only teach providential history, but most of them are education related, K through 12 education materials, as well as adult education materials. So the other thing to say about FACE, Ray, is that we are a major international Christian education organization that teaches a philosophy of education known as the principle approach. And I can't explain that in just a couple words, that which takes hours to explain. but the short version of it is it's principle, PLE, where we go back and study every subject from the standpoint, first of all, of the biblical principles that govern that subject, but then the principles of each subject. Every subject has its biblical principles and its governing principles, whether it's history, science, mathematics, geography. Every area of knowledge or truth has its principles, and frankly, we used to teach this way. The first couple hundred years of education in our country was a principled approach. It didn't look exactly like we've codified it today, but it was. Our founders were shaped by this principled method of teaching and learning. So we break all that out. We explain it all. We have programs to teach it, Ray, to homeschoolers as well as teachers in Christian schools. We have a whole master teacher training program where you can learn this methodology from the ground up. And then we have the curriculum to support it. We've spent 40 years developing curriculum and hiring writers to codify this approach. So we have the methodology, the philosophy, the methodology, and the curriculum to support it. That kind of in a nutshell is what FACE has.
They are more substantive, and they do research. They encourage the students to look in original sources and do research. So much of the education, even in our Christian schools today, is very light, superficial. I'm not saying it's wrong to use true false answers in a way of training our children, but it's not the deepest way, or just check a box or something. And so much of what goes on even in Christian education doesn't teach the children really how to think, as Max has just said, from a principle, a point of view. And so we know that a lot of the children that go through these schools, and they come out really just light years ahead of their peers and other Christian schools. And again, I'm thankful for Christian education wherever it may be. And all Christian schools are equal, as George Orwell said about people. All people are equal, but some are more equal than others. And this is really a gold standard of Christian education methodology. And they've got a history. This is not something they just kind of blew up one day and, was here. We found out about them, last year. They've been around since the 40s. There's been effort to dig this out and deepen it. And now Dr. Carol Adams, who's our friend, and Max Lyons are leading the effort there. Y'all are based in Chesapeake, Virginia, which is in the Virginia Beach area. They have a number of schools. The model school is Stonebridge. Tell us a little bit about that, Max. I know your children probably went there. You might even taught there at one time.
Yes, sir. I did. I was just actually thinking about that this is not just a pie in the sky or philosophy for me, Ray. My wife and I got involved in principal approach education back in the late 80s, and I actually came to work for Dr. Adams and Stonebridge School in 1988, where I served for 19 years as the teacher and administrator. And yes, 3 of my 4 children are graduates of Stonebridge School, and my wife and I feel incredibly blessed that we lived here next to such an incredible educational institution, and we're able to personally benefit from it. And I agree with what you said, Ray. I support Christian education anywhere that I see it, anywhere I come in contact with it. But I believe that they're good, better, and best. And I believe with all my heart, not just because I work at FACE, but because I've experienced it and I've seen its impact in the lives of hundreds and probably thousands of families and children over my 19 years at Stonebridge School. Of really biblically, I think the strongest method of education as well as academically. You're absolutely right, Ray. Using primary sources and teaching students how to think and reason from biblical principles is superior to textbook and workbook learning, which I did wholeheartedly in many years before I came across the principle approach. So Stonebridge School started in 1980, so it's about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. There are, by the way, 6 schools that started about the same time that Stonebridge School started. So we have 6 demonstration schools across the country. We have a number of other schools that are more recent and more fledgling, but we have 6 demonstration schools, and we have a goal over the next 5 years, Ray, of bringing about many more demonstration schools. We'd like to have one in every state as a model or an example as we begin to grow this movement. So that is part of our 5-year plan to grow not only the number of schools, but we have a number of, as you know, homeschooling is big across our country, and we have a number of principal approach homeschool hybrids where the students are in school for a day or 2 a week, and then the parents are following up on the teacher's lesson plan for the other 2 or 3 days. So we're not just involved in K through 12, full schools, but we're also heavily involved in homeschooling as well. And then we have a number of, in addition to the homeschool hybrids, we have a number of just homeschoolers that we work with, that we train, that we hold their hand through the use of this, our products and the methodology. And, there's almost not a day goes by here at FACE that a homeschooler doesn't call us and we work with them, or maybe they're new and we have to explain the principal approach to them. And I think going back to Stonebridge School, it is a model that people, if they're interested in seeing, or if there's one closer to them, there's one in Plymouth, there's one in Pennsylvania, there's one out in Oklahoma, there's one in Texas. So there may be a demonstration school closer to you that you would like to go and visit. But I think that's one of the best ways to learn about the principal approach, quite frankly. It's not hear about it, read about it, but go and see it.
It's very good. And I lived in Virginia Beach for a time, and of course our kids at that point were being homeschooled, and we were just finding out about Stonebridge in the mid 80s, and they were new school. And of course I learned a lot more about them since then. We moved back to South Carolina in 85. But the advantage of it is you could go take 3 or 4 days as a couple or a group. Say you wanted to start a Christian school in your area, and they can help you with that. And I'm gonna ask Max about that in a minute. But you could bring your team, a potential board group, say a pastor and 3 or 4 business people who want to start a Christian school in Timbuktu or somewhere, and you could go to Stonebridge and spend a week there getting kind of equipped, because we can talk to you and tell you about it, but you have to see it. You have to experience it. And there's so many models out there, and some of them are very superficial. And again, we're going to be praising and hoping that any kind of Christian education, even a weak model, is better than public, secular, pagan education. But if you can do the best, you should try to do it. And so we hardly recommend them as a place to go and study it. Now, they have tools, and Max is a writer, by the way. He's not just an educator, but he's written some pretty helpful books. Max, give us a couple of samples, and I know you've had a little pamphlet on Arguing for Christian Education, which we've used. Tell us about that one, and then I want you to talk about the manual you have of how to start a Christian school.
Well, I saw we just went to the shop button, and that's the first thing to say is that these books are all available through FACE on our website. And the first book that you referenced is called Sons and Daughters Walking in the Truth. Ray. And in that one, it's very short, I think about 16 pages. I have laid down the biblical reasons for Christian education, biblical and also constitutional free market reasons for Christian education. So it's just a short little apologetic, letting people know that we're not just, putting down the government schools and saying, get your kids out of there, it's bad, but there are positive biblical reasons for Christian education. Actually, if you take a careful look at the scriptures, I think you could certainly make the case that Christian education is a mandate from God. Fathers and mothers are mandated to train their children up, disciple their children in the ways of God. And you can only do that through biblical Christian education. So that's the first little booklet. The second one that you referenced is my book on, basically it's how to start and maintain and run an excellent Christian school. Now, it is based on my experience at Stonebridge School, so you'll see it has the principal approach slant to it, but it would be useful for anyone, not necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a principal approach school to benefit from that book. Title of that book is How to Establish a Christian School to Restore the Republic. Long title.
Can we put that up just so you can see it? And we've recommended this book with Exodus Mandate. And I think now that we have the alliance, the initiative going, we sometimes throw the word coalition or alliance around, but now that that's operational, we've got 18 members, and I think we're going to focus on some of our members who are doing really, really good work, and we're going to kind of try to push them along. And I think we're going to see more of our members getting behind this FACE, Foundation for American Christian Education, because one of our goals in the Christian Education Initiative, launched on March 13, is that we're going to try to really grow Christian education nationwide and maybe worldwide. We've already discussed reaching overseas, and I'm going to mention something about FACE in a minute in that regard. But we see Christian education as the norm, the biblical norm for all Christians, for all times and all situations. All right, let's look at the book. Do we see it there? Your book.
Ray, this may be a good teachable moment on using our website. I always recommend people go up into the search bar, go into shop, and then go into that search bar up at the top right-hand corner. And if you start typing how to establish, I think it will pop up. Okay. There you go.
There it is.
I even do that on my own website because it's sometimes hard to find things.
Okay. So this is a book that you can use. And, because we're seeing and discovering in the last 3 or 4 years that people are calling us all the time in Exodus Mandate. How do we get started? And this is something we hardly recommend. And Max is the author, and it's not just something he's theoretically done. He's experienced this. He has tested this arguments in this book, and it's worked. So he's going to give you both theory and practice. And this is a book that you could use to start a Christian school. And maybe you know somebody that wants to start one. We right now are talking to some people in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And this is a friend of FACE who has been kind of on the fringe of FACE, but she's a businesswoman in Chattanooga, and she's going to be trying to get a Foundation for American Christian Education school started in Chattanooga in the next several years, or maybe sooner. So we know of situations like this right now. So Max, as you can look at this webpage, you can see that this group, they've been around a while, and there is a body of work that's substantial and strikingly wonderful. It's not just 2 or 3 little books that they've written, but they've got a huge body of work. Let's go back to the big red books. I want you to see what Gail and I use in our homeschool experience in the 1970s. I saw you had those up a minute ago. The big red books, we call them. There they are. These are things that we actually used in the 70s. And so these are not new books. They've been around 40 or 50 years. The big red books, we call them. And introduced to us by Ruth Smith, who's part of their network.
Ray, could I say
Go ahead.
something? Going back to the my book on how to establish a Christian school, we have homeschool hybrids that have bought and used that book too. So it's not just it's not just for a full K through 12 school. The other thing I want to say is FACE actually has, if you will, a school planting package. This is only one component of that. So we actually can help you through the generosity of Stonebridge School. We can supply you with all the manuals that you need, your board manual, your teacher's manual, and these are samples. You could take them, they're in a Word document. You could take it and modify it and customize it for your school. We literally have all the components that you need to operate your Christian school. So it's sort of like a franchise. It's not really a franchise. We don't have that kind of relationship with anyone, but we will supply you with, at no cost. I mean, the books cost, but other than that, there's no charge for all these materials.
Let me make a comment real quick here before we get away from it. They have a pretty strong outreach in the nation of Brazil. And Roberto Rinaldi, who is also has based in America, I think he's in Orlando. Did I get the name right there?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And he's leading a group in Brazil, and they have 150 FACE or Principled Approach Christian schools in the nation of Brazil, which is pretty amazing. Let's go back to the news release a minute. I want to say something about the quality. Put the news release up again. Go to the first page. Okay, scroll down. All right, right here. Dan Smithwick. Dan Smithwick, president of the Nehemiah Institute, is one of our Christian Education Initiative members, and really my oldest, longest friend in the Access Mandate movement. He started the Nehemiah Institute, I think, in the mid-'80s, and he created the Peers test, which was Christian children in various venues, Christian schools, homeschools, and even public schools, in terms of their worldview. Do they hold to a strong Christian worldview? And he's been, I think he's tested 100,000 children, evangelical Christian children, since the late 80s. And frankly, the results are appalling. Most of our evangelical Christian children who are public schools score way in the low teens on their worldview. They do not hold any kind of a Christian worldview. And Peers stands for politics, education, economics, religion, and social issues. And if the Christian children in public school have any kind of a worldview, it's only barely in the area of religion. They may hold to some theological doctrine of the church, but they do not hold a Christian worldview in any of these other areas. And some of the Christian schools, the standard Christian schools that use secular curriculum, do pretty poorly on this test as well. But I'm happy to report to you that FACE, a Principled Approach, they score highest on Dan Smithwick's worldview Peers test in any other model. And then right behind them is what we call the classical Christian schools. They do pretty well as well. But the standard ACSI and some of the other Christian school models sometimes can do pretty poorly. So, and I think we would say that the FACE is a classical model as well. But they focus on America's unique Christian experience, the classical model of the founding era, that we were founded as a Christian nation, both the Jamestown experience in 1607 and particularly looking at the Plymouth founding in 1620. Whereas a lot of the classical models look at the medieval experience, the going back to the Middle Ages, because there were many good Christian aspects in that era as well. But faith, and this is why one reason I sort of prefer them, is that they focus on what was unique about the American founding period. In Smithwick, who we'll probably interview at some point, is a good friend of both Exodus Mandate and Faith, has documented unequivocally that the Faith model or the principal approach schools score highest. And their children graduate from Stonebridge and other schools, and they get into any university. I've been very close to Bobby Ames down in Montgomery, Alabama for years, and her graduates, a small Christian school, a faith school, they get in all the top universities. Many of them get scholarships. So the problem with the faith and the principal approach is not enough. We've got to grow this model. We've got to get more of these kind of, if we can produce more children like that are coming out of Stonebridge, it can change our country. Okay, let's see. I don't want to lose complete control of the time here. Max, is there anything else you want to bring in?
Well, I just two things on what you just said. If you're not familiar with Dan Smithwick and the work of the Nehemiah Institute, it really is very important for the body of Christ and for Christian education and for the church. So I would really encourage you to go over to his website. And he also has some excellent training materials that could be used in Christian schools, to train teachers, that could be used in churches, in Sunday school classes, where you can study biblical worldview yourself, these areas of the peers, the politics, education, economics, religious issues, and social issues. He's recently produced a course called the Worldview Course, some colleagues of his, and it's a video-based course that I just did it. I have a adult Sunday school class that I teach at my church, and we went through this course recently, and it was excellent. So that is a great tool that we all can use to educate, not only our children, but ourselves and our people in our church on biblical worldview.
We're going to probably have a special program with him at some point.
That's great.
We have some time left. Let's put up just a couple of the other members, because we're focusing on Faith, Foundation for American Christian Education today, but we want to let you see a couple of the other members that are very substantial. Let's throw up Renew a Nation. Jeff Keaton and Ron Gordon. This is a dynamic program, about 10 years old, and they are doing such extraordinary work in growing and starting and revitalizing lagging Christian schools. Can you put that webpage up real quick? We're not going to spend a lot of time on them today because we probably won't have them on a special time, but this is a program with a pretty good staff. I think they have 8 or 10 paid people, and they have big conferences. And all right, let's see. Renew a Nation. Go down to, let's look at them. This is our webpage. I'm glad you put that up. This is a webpage for Christian Education Initiative.org. Scroll down. Okay. So please go to the webpage. Now look at the member organizations. All right. Let's click on Jeff Keaton and Ron Gordon, Renew a Nation. Just click on that real quick so you can see it. And I've attended some of their conferences, and frankly, among our members, this is one of the future is very good for us as a movement because of Renew a Nation. They are doing some unusually good work in starting Christian schools, and they bring groups in where you've got Christian schools. I went to a conference, and there was about 8 or 10 Christian schools that were struggling. And they had a whole weekend conference on how to get revitalized and renewed and excited again about Christian education. And they do that. I forget what they call them, but they're Christian education or Christian school renewal conferences. So they're not only starting schools, but they're renewing schools that are struggling. And I think they're working closely with Dr. Carol Adams and Dr. Max Lyons and pushing the FACE model out more. So yes. This is one that we're going to be looking at, but I hardly recommend this. Go back to webpage on our new, here we go. These are our member organizations. So you can go here and click on anybody that's in the group. And we've got 18 members, and I don't want to slight anybody today, but I can't talk about 18 groups today. Quickly hit on the old schoolhouse down at the very bottom. Hit their webpage. Okay. This is the largest explicit evangelical Christian homeschool magazine in the nation. And so we're all promoting them. Already there's a group in China translating their articles to be used in Mandarin in China. And I was with Paul and Gina Suarez back about 2 months ago. We met with a major Chinese Christian leader. So we're not seeking to reach out overseas, but we're just being drawn in because of what's happening worldwide. And there's a back to Christian school, homeschool movement growing worldwide. And we hope that the Christian Education Initiative can be a big part of that. I think we're going to have to leave the next 10 or 15 minutes for questions and comments. So let's say one quick thing before we go. There's a new magazine that's just come out called the New American Magazine. It's actually an old magazine, but they've got a special article devoted strictly to our common agenda called Rescuing Our Children. Can you pull? Yeah, there we go. And I have one article interview in it. Most of the articles are written by Alex Newman. Scroll down a little bit. You'll see his picture there. Go up a little bit. There he is. He's a homeschooler, Christian man, and he wrote most of the articles, and I helped design and work with him for the last couple of years. And then he asked me I did one of the articles. And then Israel Wayne, who is a member of our Christian Education Initiative, has written two of the articles, one on homeschooling and then one on Christian education generally. So the magazine is a critique of the error and the danger that state education now represents to freedom and liberty in our constitutional system, not only to our Christian worldview. And Alex has written the articles, and he is going on a national tour. For a whole year, he's going to be touring the United States, speaking on this magazine and on this agenda. And many of our groups in our Christian Education Initiative are going to be behind it. And here's the schedule. We have him speaking in South Carolina, Columbia, on May 22nd. And I'm sponsoring it along with US Pie. That's Sherry Few. And he's coming to Virginia. And right after he leaves South Carolina, he'll be there for about a week. And Max's group has got things planned. Tricia Stahl, who is part of their board, is working all over the state of Virginia. He's going to be in California and Vancouver, Canada at the end of April. And I think he's just going to be overwhelmed, and he's getting large crowds promoting this magazine. Go back up to the top. This is the name of the title of the magazine. And it's basically our common agenda, the Exodus Mandate, but it takes in all of the members of our initiative, the Christian Education Initiative. So we think in the next year, we hope to have 1 million copies of this magazine circulating around the nation, where people will order 25 or 50 and give them out at their church, give them to their pastor, and try to push the message of the Christian Education Initiative, of the Exodus Mandate, of the Foundation for Mission Christian Education, all the different groups out, and see if we can accelerate and grow Christian schooling and homeschooling in a exponential way over the next several years. We think that people are ready to leave, and we think that right now we have momentum, and we've got a lot of good things going besides the Christian Education Initiative. All right, we've got 10 minutes, and I see some people on here, and I want to get some questions. Ask Max the question. He's the man today, and I'll be willing to take a question, but if you can direct it to Max, I'd be appreciative. Okay, if you're on, if you don't speak up, we'll just, let's see several people on the program. Okay. All right. Let me say I'm going to read a quote from Edmund Burke, because a lot of Christians are Lone Ranger Christians. They just say, well, I just want to tell people about Jesus. But Burke he's the famous man who wrote the book on the French Revolution, one of the top 100 books of the last century. And he talks about the need for unity and cooperation. And this is a famous quote, and if you'd like it, we can send it to you. He said, the most inconsiderable man, maybe the most insignificant person, by adding the weight of the whole, that is, joining in some cooperative endeavor like the Christian Education Initiative, has his value and his use, and the greatest talents otherwise are unserviceable to the public. And then this is the famous part of the quote. He said, when bad men combine, or you could use the word conspire, when bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one in an unpitied sacrifice, in a contemptible struggle. And that indeed is what's happening today. The left is united. They know what they're doing. They're using state education to take our country down. We're forging the chains of our own slavery by leaving our children in public schools. So we've decided on March 13th, we publicly announced the Christian Education Initiative. None of the groups are giving up their corporate vision, their mission. We're not merging. We're just associating together in common interests. Nobody's going to be forced to do anything they don't want to do, but we have some mutual interests, and we're getting off to a good start. All right, let's see. Somebody must have a question by now. I see some names here, and I'd like to hear from you. Well, Max, tell us what you're planning to do with Alex Newman when he tours Virginia.
Well, thank you. I did want to comment on Alex. One thing that I found out, Ray, is that this national tour to promote Christian education, Alex is actually traveling with his wife and children. They have some sort of travel trailer, and I don't know if you knew that, but
I did.
It's a family tour. But I've heard recently that all of it, that he has booked for his entire time. He now has more venues than he can say yes to. So that to me is exciting. It tells me that there is a huge interest in this topic, and him in particular, and in our movement. So now we need to work at getting people to these events. We are going to have him here. We are FACE and Stonebridge School are co-sponsoring Alex Newman when he's in the area. We're going to have the event at Stonebridge School where we can hold many hundreds of people. Our venue at FACE was just not big enough. So we are also going to, while he's here, he wants to learn more about the principal approach and FACE. So he's going to be touring the school, visiting classes there, learning, being at FACE, touring here and seeing our incredible Hall Slater Library. We're going to give him a Christian history tour of First Landing in Jamestown with his family while he's here. So we're very excited about having him here. I know Tricia Stahl has got him all over Virginia and a number of other venues. So we're hoping to take our state back for biblical Christian education through this event and through the efforts of Christian Education Initiative. So, I think that similar. I think that we're going to see similar events throughout the country. And Ray, I don't know where this thing is going to go. I've never seen quite an event like this where we published a magazine and then have a national speaking tour. But it sounds like to me that it's shaping up to be a major effort for our cause.
We've got 7 events planned for him in South Carolina between, I think, May 19 to May 24th. Then he's going to leave here, I think, on the 24th or 25th and be in Virginia for about a week. He told me just a few days ago that he's having now to reject appointments, and he said, I've never had that before. the demand is so great, and he has 4 small children who he's homeschooling. This man is only about 33 or 34 years old, a genius, a photographic memory, one of the best journalists in conservative and Christian journalists in the nation. It probably has an international audience of 1 million or 2 that read his stuff regularly. So this magazine, the New American Magazine, the February 4th issue, Rescuing Our Children, is a big development for our entire movement. I will add that I'm speaking more now too, kind of as a backup. I've been invited to Chattanooga, to North Georgia, some other places to speak. Not as much as Alex, but others in our movement are getting speaking opportunities. Israel Wayne, of course, is part of our Christian Education Initiative, and he speaks all the time and a lot of homeschool conventions, and he's also promoting the magazines. So this is a big deal, and it's going to last a year. And he's got his RV, and he's traveling and staying in his RV while he travels the nation. Anything else you want to say about? Let me say something about Trish Stahl. It's too bad we don't have more like her. If every state had 2 or 3 people like Tricia Stahl, we'd get a lot done. She's just a tremendously good worker, and she's a board member for FACE, and she's has worked. And I've looked at the Virginia schedule, and I think they're going to be in Richmond and Northern Virginia, and
Yes.
I don't know other places, not just in Virginia Beach or Chesapeake. So it's a big tour, and we're going to have 7 events in South Carolina, and I'm doing one in Columbia on the 22nd of May.
Well, I think we're very everybody in our CEI are very excited about this and getting behind and promoting Alex and these events, getting pastors there and leaders there, and anybody interested in rescuing our children.
He's speaking in Vancouver, Canada on the 26th and 27th of April. He's actually going to fly out there to 2 large events, and I think they expect about 1,000 in Vancouver. And then on the 27th of April, he's flying down to Orange County, Los Angeles, and speaking at the Eagle Forum State Convention. And they're, I think, expecting around 1,000. And he's a keynote speaker, and he'll be giving 2 addresses there. And one of them will be on the magazine called Rescuing Our Children. So it's, and I can't say where other states. I think he's traveling up the East Coast in May, June, July, all the way to New York, and then cutting across the Midwest. But I can't tell you what the rest of the schedule is like. If you want to get in touch with me about reaching him, I could probably help you with that.
I've got a friend in Michigan who's planning on hosting him there, so I know he's going across the country, and
I'm guessing he'll be in 15 to 20 states in the next year, maybe more.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think we've run out of time, and I'm sorry we didn't have more questions, but you can contact the office at exodusmandate@gmail.com. And we do need donations because we have to pay for this program. All right, let's close in prayer. Father God, we thank you for the Christian Education Initiative that you enabled us to launch on the 13th of March. We thank you especially for Foundation for American Christian Education and the great work that they've done for 40 or 50 years. We pray now you would advance our common interest to grow Christian education nationally and internationally, and we'll give you the thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. This is my story, and I'm sticking with it.